Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
Hi Lynn, isn't it great to be back on the podcast? We have another amazing guest this week, and we are talking to our first book editor and publisher, which I know will get some of our listeners out there jumping up and down because we all think that we have a book in us, don't we? Some of us do, some of us don't.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's a question that we should ask our guest, who's Rebecca Kaiser from Allen & Unwin. Why don't you do the intro?
I would love to. Yes, Rebecca Kaiser is editorial director at Allen & Unwin. She's worked in the publishing industry for over 30 years as an editor and publisher, and her particular areas of interest are biography, history, and current affairs. Rebecca considers herself very lucky to have worked with authors such as Chris Masters, David Marr, Michael Kirby, Kerry Ann Walsh, Dick Smith, Tom Keneally, and Brian Brown. Amazing, Rebecca. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's lovely to have you join us.
It is.
Let us know, do we all have a book in us?
Well, Tom Keneally says every mug can write a novel.
Oh, well,
I'm
if
not
Tom says it.
convinced. But look, everybody does have a book. It doesn't have to be a published book.
That's a diplomatic way of putting it.
But I absolutely admire anybody who can put their mind to the hard yards of writing a book. So, if you can do that, you've got a book in you.
Yeah.
And it's the pleasure of writing and, who you want to write for. Not everybody can write a published book, but every mug can write a book.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Love it.
Gosh, 30 years is a long time in publishing. You must have seen some big changes in that time. Do you want to tell us about some of the changes you've seen?
Oh, gracious goodness, yes. Well, you know what? When I first started, we used to get typescript, like manuscripts typed with a typewriter. And then the editor would use a pencil and go through, and there weren't any discs, there weren't any, floppy disks or hard drives or anything like that. And so an editor would go through with a pencil and mark
Wow.
every correction. And then that would go to a typesetter who would key in the entire manuscript, including the corrections. And we used to correct galleys, bromides, streams of bromides with a scalpel and clag paste. So it's in 30 years going from that to having everything done on screen, editing on screen, authors writing on screen. We send edited manuscript to the typesetter who puts it through. I mean, there's still a great skill in typesetting. Absolutely. It's not word processing, it's typesetting, but these stages have actually been taken out of it that actually streamline the process. And covers, my God, when we had covers designed in the past, you'd get a designer with a, coloured pencil and overlay paper, and you'd have to imagine what the cover was going to look like. Now we get cover roughs and it's there, you know exactly what the cover's going to look like. So all those changes have happened in 30 years. Thank you very much, care of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates.
Wow, that's so amazing. Actually, all
amazing.
those discussions of galleys, that's what it was like when I worked at my first magazine, which was Dolly. We used to have manual typewriters.
Yeah, exactly.
And type it up to send down to the typesetters. Yeah, amazing.
Wow. So many changes. I mean, you've obviously had a lot of publishing successes in that time. What are some of your most memorable that you'll just never forget?
Some of them, look, there's success in terms of sales, but there's also success in terms of the meaning of some books. So, you know, Chris Masters, Jonestown. I mean, you know, it was such an important book, and we sold lots and lots and lots of copies. I published Dick Smith's autobiography this year. It was the best-selling Australian autobiography of this year. But I've just published a really beautiful, beautiful work of nonfiction called Missing, by a young and very up-and-coming writer who I think is just stunning. And it's not going to sell, you know, zillion million copies, but it's actually his entree into the world of publishing, and hopefully, you know, it's the start of a significant career for him. His name is Tom Patterson, by the way, and he won the Walkley for the best short. I can't remember the precise Walkley description, but it was a story he had done in the Australian. So the best short feature story, that's what it was. And as I said, it's not going to sell a million copies, but my God, it's a beautiful book, and you know that young man is going places. So for me, that's a success as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's lovely, actually, to see people's careers right from the beginning to, you know, somebody like Tom Keneally. But yeah, so many of our listeners are writers and journalists, and they might be interested in writing a nonfiction book. The question, where should they start?
With a great story.
Of course.
With a great story. But it's a story that's got to sustain itself, you know.
Yeah.
You can do a great feature story of, you know, 5,000 words, but a great feature story doesn't necessarily translate into a book of 80,000 words. So that's what you've got to focus on, you know. Will this story sustain itself?
Yeah. That is interesting.
Yeah, well, that's obviously key. I mean, also, I think something that stumps many wannabe authors is the process. You know, do you send your manuscript straight to the publisher, or do you look for the right agent? You know, will you have more luck with an agent, and do publishers look more favorably on you if you have an agent? Well, what do you think?
Look, publishers will look more favourably on you if you have an agent, of course, but it's just as hard finding an agent to pick you up as it is to, you know, getting a publisher to pick you up, because, and often agents actually go searching for authors as well. I mean, an agent might see a fantastic story and think, wow, that will turn into a book. I'm going to connect with the journalist who wrote that story and see what we can do, and we'll develop something. So that's often the way it will happen. But, you know, if the story is good enough, there will be a way through, you know. And of course, which is where I know you'd like me to go, is most publishers have, they used to be called slush piles, the most gruesome and gross description. But here at Allen and Unwin, we have a Friday pitch, and you don't just have to pitch on a Friday, by the way. But, you know, there is a pitch document that actually gives a really, really, really clear direction to anybody who wants to pitch. You've got to think about markets, you've got to think about competing titles, you've got to think about a whole lot of things. And it's a pitch document, I shouldn't say this, but it's a pitch document you know, you could use with any publisher, because it does give everything you need to convince a publisher that your book's worth publishing. And we have found, you know, any number of books through through Friday Pitch.
Actually,
and successful ones.
Oh, good. I've actually recommended the Friday Pitch sort of specifications to people interested in books, because it has really basic stuff like how long it should be, that it has a table of contents, a précis. It's just got it's a template, really. And obviously, because Allen and Unwin is, aren't you the biggest independent book publisher? Yeah.
Yep, we are indeed. I think last week, book scan figures, we were number 2 number 2 publisher. That includes all of the big internationals. The number 2 publisher in Australia, sort of. So we sit between, 4 and 2. So yes, we are the biggest independent publisher. Yeah. The other thing, that I'd suggest would-be authors do is actually just go into a bookstore and roam around and pick up a book that sits firmly in the space where they would like their potential book to be, and look at the publisher and go to the acknowledgements pages, and there will often be praise of the person in-house, and direct your proposal specifically to them. See, I'm going to be killed for that, actually.
You've given the game away.
I
have. What about like authors who have gone the self-publishing route or may have published traditionally but also self-published? Do publishers look at how they've gone in that landscape, and
Yeah, they do. They look at a whole lot of things. Obviously, a great skill is attached to actually picking up the zeitgeist, but a hell of a lot of it is luck.
Yes.
Really. But publishers do look at past successes, or do look at the zeitgeist, the conversations of the time. They look at social media, for example, presence on social media. There are some, there are some books that are very specifically directed, say, to, women in their 30s and 40s, more lifestyle books. And social media presence is a huge, huge part of the decision-making in-house. But there are other books, fine works of history, for example, where that a reputation and the scholarship and the status of the author will give the book a presence. So every book's different,
Yeah. Because I have heard that it helps to have a bit of a sort of public profile if you want to get a book published, like a social media sort of following. And I certainly, with my background in cookbooks, that was a big thing. Somebody who had a food blogger who had a bit of a following. It was a big thing for a while. Do you think that's still true?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And there are publishers in publishing houses who spend a lot of time looking at social media, looking for potential as they sort of trawl through all of these social media feeds. And they'll often, look at, the number of followers or the kind of followers, for specific books. Absolutely, it's really important.
I imagine like promotion and that whole space has changed so much as well. I was listening to Brené Brown on a podcast last week, actually, and she was talking, one of her books that she put out there just died because she didn't promote it. She was kind of saying she felt she didn't want to, and she didn't want to go into that big space and try and sell it. She didn't feel that she could. And
she didn't want to be salesy, did she?
No. Yeah. And she got a real shock when the publisher rang her and asked her to buy all the books because they were going to be pulped. And and it was a big thing for her. And I remember that happening to me when I wrote my book, and I looked back, me and my co-author, I'd just had a baby. She was working on another book at the time, and we hadn't promoted it or pushed it out there as much as we could have. And it didn't do well. And I always think, is the onus on the authors now? Like it used to perhaps be on the publishers, but have budgetary, limitations meant you have to do so much more as an author to promote it?
Look, yeah, you do have to do more as an author to promote it. Absolutely. I mean, publishers invest an enormous amount into publicity and marketing, but if you've got if an author is really active, it can help. We publish a lot of what we call rural romance, fiction for women. Yeah. And some of our best and most successful authors are just amazing when it comes to doing their own promotion. I mean, we do everything that we can, but it's that personal connection that you get through, you know, social media. They'll go, we've got authors who've taken themselves off their own bat on rural tours, and they've gone from town to town and dropped into bookstores. Now, that's just an amazing thing to do. And, you know, we don't expect every author to do something like that, but it does help, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing.
And the other thing, of course, is there's only so much, you know, conventional media space. You can, you know, there are only so many radio programs that you can appear on, and there are, and, you know, reviews which don't sell books in the way that they used to, but the review pages are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. There are fewer and fewer reviews. And so the competition, all of those publishers in Australia for that media space is just really, really hard. So anything an author can do absolutely helps sales.
Amazing. I mean, I know that you don't have a crystal ball, although you sort of do
I
after
wish
30 years.
I did.
After 30 years in the business, you've got a little bit of one. But I mean, have there been some books that you thought would be really big sellers and just flopped, and you were kind of shocked at that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to tell you what they are, though. But, oh, my God, you know, as publishers, we're books advocates, you know, we're in-house advocates. We're the people who, if we're passionate about a book, our colleagues will feel the passion. And, you know, there are books that we are incredibly passionate about, but sometimes they just don't ring or sing or whatever you want to describe it as in the real world, in the bookstores with readers. And it's really, really devastating. Conversely, there are books you go, my God, did that really sell that many copies? Why?
Yeah.
You know? And it's that zeitgeist thing.
Yeah.
When you and I chatted before this, we talked about, it's not one of your books, but Phosphorescence.
Yeah.
And that did really well. But it's a beautiful book that our journalist, Julia Baird, wrote. It just happened to be hit that zeitgeist because it came out when the pandemic, and who would have predicted that? And it was just a beautiful nonfiction story.
Yeah. And, you know, the beauty of the book came from the publisher's commitment to it.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's very hard to make a book as beautiful as that. And you really have to throw a lot of energy, creative energy behind it. So that publisher knew, you know, this book is going to work. I understand this market. I feel this market. And it did work. But if it hadn't worked, she would have been, you know, absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
Because you can see the love, her love of it in it, you know.
Absolutely. Well, I know that one of the biggest questions our audience would have for you is about money and making money. And so this is really the $1 million question, or maybe even the 20 grand question. But can you make a living as an author of non-fiction books or even fiction books in Australia?
Some people can, but most people can't. You know, it's just the reality of it. You know, we work on the basis that as a publisher, we give you an advance on future royalties, and that advance is determined on what we think the sales will be, you know, and you have to earn out that advance before you get royalties. So it is actually really, really hard to make an income that will sustain you in the fashion that you would like to be sustained.
Yes.
How many copies makes a bestseller in Australia?
Oh, it depends, you know. It really does depend. Obviously, on the advance paid, you know, if you pay an advance of $200,000 to an author and you sell 5,000 copies, that's not going to be. That's not good. That's not good. Yes. But conversely, if you pay an advance of $10,000 and you sell 20,000 copies, that's fantastic, and that will also make the author very happy because royalties will be significant. I guess the other really important thing for journalists to understand is that, a freelance journalist is paid. Do they still get paid a word rate, or is it a project rate?
It depends.
So, it could be either.
But
standard journalists usually word rate, but most people move to more project rate.
And so you're actually paid for writing that piece of work. You know what the rate is. With books, we're taking a huge gamble and paying you money up front, but it's not exactly the same as paying you to write a piece.
So it's really a bet against future income. And
it
obviously
is.
Some books are going to sell, you assume are going to sell 200,000 copies, and some are going to sell 20,000, or some going to sell.
There will be very few books that sell 200,000 copies, I have to tell you. Absolutely. We'd be very happy with 20,000. So going back to your original question, what makes a bestseller? It depends on the genre. I mean, a really good piece of women's fiction, for example, we'd be really happy at 20,000 copies. For great crime fiction, or somebody like Leanne Moriarty, my gracious goodness me, that's 100,000 plus. But for a good work of non-fiction, 10 to 15,000 copies is a bestseller.
Yeah.
So
how interesting. What about YA? Are the stats different for YA authors?
I actually don't know a lot about YA. The economics of publishing for children and in the area of YA is slightly different to publishing in the adult world. But I don't think, most YA authors won't make a squillion.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something about sort of consistency as well? I mean, I'm sure pretty well everyone in half of Australia has given a Peter Fitzsimons book to their dad for Christmas. And there's always one every year, and that's a classic non-fiction.
There are two every year actually now.
Oh, are there?
Wow.
So the fact that maybe every time, say, he puts out a book, people go, wow, there must be some people discover it, and then go through his back catalogue as well.
Yeah.
And that consistency? Absolutely.
So every October, there will be a new Peter Fitzsimons. So, your Peter Fitzsimons, and I'm not quite sure, I think it's March, his second book, but, every year there will be a new Peter Fitzsimons for Christmas, and every year Peter Fitzsimons readers will know that that's coming. And that's actually really true for women's fiction and crime fiction. Readers expect a new work every year.
Wow.
And for particular authors, we publish Chris Hammer, for example, and every year readers know that in October there will be a new Chris Hammer. Every year readers know in rural romance that there will be a new Fleur MacDonald in October, and they wait for them.
Wow, the pressure's on for those authors. I mean, if you're publishing something in October, at what point does the author finish the book? Would it be like June or something?
Oh no! Oh my God, you've just given me a heart attack. In an ideal world, we would want a manuscript 6 months before we go to print. And we allow a month for printing because it's a complex process, and we have to fit into printing lines and binding lines, and all of the publishers in Australia, there are 2 book printers and we all have to fit in that. And then we have to allow a month for the logistics of getting a book out into the bookstores on the publication date. That's every single bookstore around Australia. So the logistics of that's fine. So, taking that into account, we would want a manuscript 8 months before the publication date in an ideal world. We know that the world isn't ideal.
I suppose it would be smart as well for a writer with a great idea to think about when their book would get the most traction and plan ahead to send it to you in that, the right time frame.
Yeah. And the other thing is that everybody says, oh, I want to publish for Christmas. Well, no, you don't, because, everybody else is publishing for Christmas, and you need that space in the market.
Yeah.
And you need that space for publicity. So
otherwise they'll just be doing Peter Fitzsimons and you won't
Yeah.
get a look in.
Yeah, I mean, but that's right. That's absolutely right. So sometimes, publishing in what is called a dead month, say February, can be fantastic because there are a lot more media opportunities, and there is a lot more space in booksellers' minds to take books and hand sell them. So yeah.
Yep. That's good
interesting.
advice.
Yeah. Well, I do know my son-in-law did his last book, and it was a year. He put it in a year. And Ellen and Unwin, because you publish him, and he had it in a year before, and then you worked out the best time to fit it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of books competing, our books competing for every month. So we need to work out what works best for the author as well as for us as a company.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll bring in the big question, because of all this schedule, what about the pandemic? Do you think that has changed the way people read and work, and the book publishing industry as well?
Well, like everybody else, we had to start working from home, and some people liked it and others, such as me, hated it.
Yes.
We had huge supply chain issues like everybody else had last year. Just getting books from the warehouse to bookstores was really hard. But the book market actually grew, and it's fantastic. People have rediscovered books, and that's despite, in the last lockdown, half of Australian book suppliers, which includes your local bookstore and, Big W, which is a really, really big part of the book market now, really significant, they were closed down. Those shop fronts were closed down. So it really sort of decimated the sales, not the normal sales patterns, but people found ways to get books because they love them,
Yeah.
So it was challenging, as it was for everybody else.
But do you think, one thing I remember, because the Sydney Writers' Festival was cancelled
the
first month of the pandemic, and I didn't realise, but apparently it's something like that. You would expect to sell, like the bookseller there would expect to sell 20 or 30,000 books. Yeah. And that must have made a difference too.
Well, yes. It does. It makes a difference to that bookseller. Absolutely. Most definitely.
But even author events, they were virtual and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And it's not the same. The Byron Writers Festival was cancelled twice. And, authors, there are authors who hate doing, that whole publicity thing and, avoid it like the plague. But there are others who just love it and embrace it and connect so fantastically well with their audiences. So when those festivals aren't on, it's really hard.
Do you find that you use many freelancers at Allen and Unwin? And if you do, what type of freelancers do you use?
We use freelance editors, freelance proofreaders, freelance designers, freelance indexers. So the editors at Allen and Unwin, essentially project managers. They all have to be really good editors because they make decisions about, the kind of work that needs to be done on a manuscript and the right person to do that work. But and what's very interesting, a lot of freelance editors are going back in-house now.
Ooh.
So, the freelancers we relied on in the past aren't as available as they used to be. So, all publishing houses look for good freelancers.
So how can people get into your little black book?
They actually, we send out a test, and I know it's hard for people who have been in the industry for, have worked as maybe sub-editors for a long time. But, there are particular things in books that it's that sustained over 80,000 words that may be a little bit different to subbing a newspaper, for example. But we're always looking for as I said, freelance editors. So just connect to our website or through reception, and somebody will get back.
Great.
Oh, that's interesting.
We love hearing about tech tips from our guests, and we do ask our guests for their best tools of the trade that they find useful. Do you have any programs that you would be lost without, or any anything that you particularly love using?
Well, we're actually very old-fashioned. And the one thing I would say, though, is that any potential author is to use Word. A lot of journalists are used to using, in-house publishing programs, or, the sort of proprietorial programs. And it just doesn't compute. It makes it really, really difficult. So use Word, please.
Oh, that's interesting.
Good advice.
Well, actually, it's interesting, but almost everything I do, which is obviously not book publishing, I do in Word, and I'm sure you do, Rachel, too. It's basic but standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, but you'd be surprised. I've got manuscripts that haven't been created in Word, sort of been created in Apple Docs, for example. And it's things like these really weird characters appear, and you can't, apostrophes can't be changed, like really, really, really weird things. So yes, Word.
Yes, Word.
Well, we could talk to you all day, but we probably have to wrap up fairly soon. I just want to do a little quick recap and maybe get your top 3 tips for somebody who wants to write a book. What would you advise them? I know you mentioned embrace the marketing process of it and the promotional side. Are there other tips that you would have that you would give every wannabe author out there?
Oh, patience. Yes. If you're writing nonfiction, you don't need to tell us everything you've discovered. And this is a real issue for a lot of journalists. Often it's what you leave out that's most powerful. So, just think about the structure of the book and how you would like to read it. But truly, you do not need to include every piece of information, because you read books in a very different way to the way you read feature stories and to the way you read a news story.
Oh, wow. So much to think about. So where can people find you and find out what you do? Obviously, we'll put a link to maybe the Friday pitch, which is obviously a good thing.
Absolutely. Well, they won't be able to find me soon because I'm retiring, but
nice.
It's just through the normal Allen and Unwin.
Yeah, and I do think we will. The Friday pitch is a great resource. We'll certainly mention that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing.
Most publishers do have a version of it.
Yeah. How fantastic, Rebecca. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge today. It has been a really lively and fun chat for us.
Yes.
and I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of our listeners out there who might have that non-fiction manuscript buried somewhere in the bottom drawer or in a folder.
Have that brilliant story that they really want to tell,
Absolutely.
Wow. Yes, thank you so much. And I think that's the end of our show. So lovely to chat to you, Rebecca, this week. It was really interesting. And thanks to all our listeners who's been listening. Our numbers are going up heaps, Rach, which is really nice.
People must like it.
Yeah, they must. So if you do like the show, don't forget to leave a rating and review on the platform where you find your podcasts.
And thanks for the conversation too. I really enjoyed it as well.
It was fantastic.
Lovely.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.